we are live right now.
Perfect. I think I'm just gonna keep eating these until I'm just completely made out of GABA. It'll be wonderful.
All right, guys, we are back.
We're back.
Hopefully for the next hour. We again are doing a test stream today. We're trying to shake out bugs. We're using a particular software that is seems to have its own little quirks and character to it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not like total.
So our microphone has been cutting out after about an hour. We're hoping that the changes we will just fix it. But that's what this is for, and we will continue to make adjustments until we get a working stream for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Remember where we were?
No idea.
No clue.
No.
Okay. Well then, I have an interesting topic that I would love to talk about.
What?
Time.
Oh, is it time though for that?
I think so. It's time.
It's time.
It's always time, man. When you think about it, we're always in time. I mean, what would it be like to be outside of time? And if such a thing's possible?
Would you be everywhere at once or nowhere, never?
Depends on what you would view as existence, right? I mean, would existence... I mean, it might be possible that what we experience is an illusion. From a kind of like a physicalist perspective.
True. Maybe if you were...
So then it would be nowhere, everywhere.
Well, that begs the question then, is time a single dimension? And if it's multidimensional, then there would really likely be no stepping outside of time. There would just be stepping into more dimensions of time.
That's a really good point, because you might be able to experience an infinite amount of time within one moment of it. I mean, you could call it time depth, to where just like how there's an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2, there's an infinite amount of depth in time between the moment of now and the moment of the future.
Well, also if we consider it, it's like a 3D axis. Then our perception of time would really just be the x-axis. It would be, you can any sequence of points along the x-axis. So if you add a second dimension, that's usually, I think, what people would refer to as the multiverse kind of theory, which, interestingly enough, I think they tends to be thought of more of another dimension of space.
But there might not be any more space within the framework.
But like if we think of it as another dimension of time, that definitely adds so now there's infinite there's infinite iterations of that sequence, but then you also have to wonder how if you go along the x-axis this way, you could have a y-axis this way, but you could also have you could have another version of the x-axis this way on the y-axis, but you could also go this way across all the different y-axes.
Yeah.
And then you could take it a step further if you wanted to and say, add a depth, like you were saying, so make it three-dimensional. Now you have the z-axis.
Which is so fascinating to me, because it seems like once you get rid of space and you're only really playing around with time, and you kind of abstract to temporal dimensions and you get to the third dimension, it's no longer about just depth. When you get to that third dimensional space, it would practically be the same level of observation we would have within a third dimensional space, relative to if you could withstand the conditions for life in such a different environment. But
I can't even imagine. I think it's almost the same way as a single dot on a piece of paper, trying to imagine what it would be like to be in a two-dimensional space, like a dot that could just travel one direction. Me trying to imagine what it would be like to live in multiple dimensions
Mm-hmm.
of time, it would change everything.
Now, what's interesting is that could that be intelligible? It might. I mean,
we'd have to have a completely new sensory system.
Exactly.
Brain.
But what's fascinating is that the brain and the sensory systems we've developed are useful pathways for survival, not necessarily, like 100% grounded truth. They just are manifested navigational pathways. And so why that's the case? I mean, probably because we are macroscopic creatures in space-time, and we live in a third-dimensional space. And I do think that it is possible to kind of turn and reiterate conscious creatures to maybe even perform on a level of self-awareness in that high-dimensional space, because there technically wouldn't be any limitations beyond sensory and brain perceptions,
Mm-hmm.
So it does seem to be within the realm of intelligibility if we could get there.
And it'd be interesting to explore the possibility of our sensory system and brain just not being sophisticated enough to be able to perceive another dimension, whether it be time or something else.
Or
because if you think about our sensory system is pretty rudimentary.
Yeah.
And even have had to design machines to be able to compensate for our lack of sophisticated sensory system.
Mm-hmm.
Infrared light, not something that we can see, just as an example.
Yeah.
Infrared light is something and I'm sure there's a biological reason for that. I'm sure that it has a lot to do with what's necessary for survival.
Yeah, and that is an interesting point, because there are animals that can sense or perceive infrared light, and maybe, like you said, we didn't develop, it wasn't necessary for our kind of adaptation to the environment. And if that's the case, could that be the same for dimensions? Because when you think about it, if we were to perceive a whole other dimension, that level of information would probably be a complete overload, and completely unnecessary for the rudimentary survival at the level that those organisms were at. Because I mean, if you think about it, like, let's start as a single cell organism. I mean, we have no clue if they're conscious or not, but they do make rudimentary yes/no decisions based on their perceptual information that they've gathered through their rudimentary experience. And so, in some way, that they are aware, not self-aware. There's obviously that distinction there. And when you would get to probably a higher level organism, where it's very much a conglomeration of these cells, and they now have the sophistication and the energy to then go further to navigate that world on a level that they can participate with other multicellular organisms. If there was no need for that other dimension, if the organisms that kind of went to that place, that tried to structure themselves a part of these much more, I would say probably more complex dimensions, mm-hmm. and smaller than what we perceive at a macroscopic level, you wouldn't go there at all. You would die. So you would discard that information. They didn't have self-awareness, but they had the awareness to know how to structurally refine, compete and to gather energy in the most efficient way. And who knows? Maybe there were successful organisms that did go into that dimension. We don't see them, and maybe that's what we think angels and demons are.
And there's interesting theories that are brought about as a result of the possibility of these other dimensions, based off of what we don't have the capability of knowing right now. Which, for instance, there are theories that involve dark matter being something that is caused by, and dark energy, I believe, too, something that is caused by another dimension that we can't observe. Like they're able to, and these are terms that they come up with to apply to these large scale events that happen in the universe that they cannot explain with current mathematics, like the and I'm again delving outside of my area of expertise here, but
same.
I think it has to do with the gravitation, the gravitational movement of cosmic bodies that behave as if there's something else there and there's not, that we can see.
And maybe that's another time dimension.
Well, that's kind of where those theories arise from. It is maybe because we can't currently understand this with mathematics. One possible explanation is that we simply don't have the ability to observe whatever it is that's causing it. Which, it's interesting to watch the distortion that happens of the terms dark matter and dark energy, especially in the YouTube universe, because it does sound very mysterious. Sounds like it's something that is more understood than it actually is in its terminology.
Yeah. It's like dark matter. It's kind of like emo version of material.
As if we know for sure that there's matter there that we just can't see. And we don't. It's just a term that's used to describe our lack of understanding of something.
I mean, personally, I don't have any views on what those could be, because who in the world knows?
Yeah.
But to me, if there was no physical weight, it does seem that there could be a possible explanation in maybe information theory and fundamental information.
Physical weight as in mass? Are you talking about mass?
Yeah, well, yes, but it would be more what I would see those as is more so mathematical mass instead of actually within space-time, potentially, if that makes sense. Within space-time, yes, but the causation would be from structures outside of space-time.
Outside of our observable space-time.
Outside of our observable space-time. And I'm still very interested in what space-time is, because, lots of physicists are saying, that the whole space-time is doom movement, which doesn't mean that they're going to get rid of it, but it's at its limits. And once we've kind of ended the limits of space-time, and we've kind of not understood everything, but most of it,
What do you mean they're saying it's at its limits?
Like the Einstein's theory lays out exactly what it does and what it doesn't do, where it ends, like the Planck scale. Like, it doesn't work mathematically below the Planck scale. That's as far as it goes.
That's the whole reason for the rise the rise of quantum mechanics.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's described things that work within that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then maybe we'll get somewhere with string theory potentially. But
I tend to doubt math. Like that's the string theory just relies on too many things that have yet to be even proven. Mm-hmm. I mean, outside of my area, I'll qualify it first before I say this. Yeah. But my understanding is that that it is. I want to say it relies on the. If memory serves me correctly, it relies on the existence of something that has yet to be discovered. I want to say quark. Sorry, not quartz, quark. But I'm not sure that's correct. Maybe somebody can correct me if that's wrong. But it relies on the existence of something that has yet to be proven, and everything else is built on top of that thing. Yeah, it's like a really elaborate story that, if right, would have major implications, but it's just very beautiful fiction, right? Potentially. And the fact that it, also fails to describe several different other areas of physics, like, indicates, while there might be certain elements of truth within it, that perhaps it's not the right track. Mm-hmm. And yeah. There are much smarter people than me that are studying this. And maybe someone is a professional. But that's my understanding of what a lot of them, are thinking, especially those delving into areas like quantum mechanics. What would be very nice is if we could bridge the gap between classical mechanics and quantum mechanics. That would be very awesome, because I'm, at least to my knowledge, I'm not sure, there seems to be kind of a level of not misunderstanding, because we don't understand it all, but just a level of non-understanding that bridge between how we understand things on a quantum level and integrating that into what manifests at a classical mechanical level. And if string theory doesn't do that, then personally I'm not really inclined to even pay attention to it. It's like, great, if this works, then great, that has major implications, but how are we going to bridge this gap? Right now it's not even telling the full story, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So until it can tell the full story. Yeah. Like, I would love to know what goes on a quantum level in brains. That would be very awesome if we could get to that point. And maybe what do you know about quantum computers? Are those pretty freaky? Very little. I just know very, very little about mainly because they're not an accessible technology to me. Like, are so expensive and infeasible to build that it has no practical application for me. We'll build them soon. Join our Patreon. I would love to someday have that kind of level of computing accessible, but it's not something that I can even experience. So there's in my brain, there's no point in me filling up that space with knowledge that I can't use. And I do know that in the way that it's so current hardware is often limited by its binary computations, 0 and 1, and we can do a lot of things with 0 and 1. want. However, one of the benefits of quantum computing, to my understanding, is that it takes the 0-1 calculation, that binary operation, and in a sense breaks it down into more components to where, so in Python and programming actually in general, we have things called integers and we have things called floats. Integers are 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, any whole number. Floats are basically decimals. They in machine learning, a lot of times we translate integers into a decimal between 0 and 1 in order to make it more universally applicable. We will scale things down into a scale between 0 and 1 because that's something we can limit. We can't limit 0 to infinity. Quantum computing, to my understanding, does something similar, where it now allows you to have that whole spectrum to work with instead of just 0 and 1. So you have a lot more computational leeway and power and specificity that you can add. And now instead of maybe 64-bit integer capabilities, we could have spitballing million-bit integers.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I hope this definitely becomes the norm where everyone has a quantum computer.
I'm telling you,
probably have
machine learning would
brain.
Explode as far as its advancement and capabilities, because a lot of what limits us right now is our hardware.
Yeah.
We have models that are, and when I say model, I'm talking about the AI. The AI is a model. It's an architecture that's been trained. And it's a file. It's stored as a file. So we have these model files that are oftentimes hundreds of gigabytes, especially for large language models. I mean, especially for large language models, such as the larger ChatGPT models that are more capable and whatnot. They are very big, and the entire model has to be loaded into memory, computer memory. So that limits your capabilities because now that's only able to run on massive systems and it's going to run slowly.
Okay, that makes complete sense. So the hardware is what's limiting us. So once we get supercomputers to the masses, then we should see an explosion in intelligence, perhaps.
Quantum computers, you mean?
Oh yeah, quantum computers. Yeah.
Well, yeah. If we got quantum computers to the masses, the sky's the limit, so to speak. As far as just computing power in general, our games would go from being realistic to being a real world, real life experience that you could just walk in like.
Wow. Yeah.
And they would be able to be much smaller, and we could develop models that could store every bit of knowledge. Because right now, a lot of the way that a lot of these large language models work is by using either a database or, for instance, a Google search, and feeding that information into the model, which then processes it, learns the relevant information that it needs to from that web extracted data, then answers your question. And so they're not able to be trained on all the data from the internet.
Yeah.
Obviously, because that would be massive. But if you're able to if we had quantum computers accessible, I'm sure we could train a model with all the information ever to exist.
Now, so that's how we upgrade computers' computational power. Now, how do we humans upgrade our own computational
That's
power?
a great question. We upgrade our computer's computational power and then just feed that to us.
Yes, we get brain chips. That's gonna fix us. Though I will say, thanks to your recommendation on pramarisatam, I have been
Full steam ahead.
full steam ahead. Yes, like my memory processing speed, those aha moments, like all of it. It's totally within that. So maybe you could explain kind of what that does a little bit.
Yeah, and this would be fun to
Neurochemicals.
and these we're delving into kind of the field of research chemicals at this point. We're talking about racetams, which is a group of chemicals that I believe it was first developed in Russia with pyrostam. Yeah, I believe that was the first one that was made, and this particular set of research chemicals, interestingly enough, even though there have been developments done on it over the years and progress that is made, and they are available in some countries as prescription or over-the-counter drugs, they haven't been adopted by any pharmaceutical company. I'm guessing mainly due to the fact that they don't seem to have much verifiable treatment application, as in none of them are going to be able to fix a lot of the problems that, or at least consistently fix a lot of the problems that the pharmaceutical industry is interested in making money off of.
Yeah.
And so that might be why they haven't really been developed, or why
It
they
might
adopted
be
in America.
viewed a little more holistically, potentially.
Yeah,
Kind of in a
and
sense.
these are really interesting because you think they would have been, because they have such low side effects consistently across versions that have been developed.
Yeah.
They act primarily upon the acetylcholine receptors in the brain, which is our current understanding of them. I will say that because of the lack of clinical trials and adoption by the pharmaceutical or the big pharma, industry, there is a limited amount of data as far as its mechanism of action goes. But from what it would seem like, and what the data suggests so far, most of these act upon the acetylcholine receptors in the brain, which, for those that don't know, are receptors that are very important to learning. And
Tight lock in.
If I were to use a machine learning term equivalent to acetylcholine, it would be the learning rate, adjusting the learning rate of a model in training. And they essentially help the neurons in your brain retrain and adopt information a lot faster. And so as a result, some of them, depending on where it is that it's affecting, some of them have some would seem like would have some downstream effect, such as on maybe downstream dopamine receptors or D2 receptors in your hippocampus. But we know pretty assuredly that they have a fairly significant impact on acetylcholine, and we know that for multiple reasons, one of which is that if you take a race tam without supplementing with a choline source for your body, you'll get
Headaches.
what's known as the race tam headaches, which is basically just this headache that comes about because your brain doesn't have enough acetylcholine. And so people will supplement with multiple sources of choline while they're taking these, and that will prevent those headaches. And that is virtually the only side effect for a lot of these, is that headache. And so pyroxene was the first one that was studied. There were several that were developed after that, and two of my favorites are the Paramerase Tam, which is a really good daily supplement because it doesn't
really good.
You don't build up a tolerance to it, and supposing you have a pretty normal brain chemistry, it makes you feel kind of like you're firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And
it feels good to learn.
Mm-hmm. And you can notice recall and memory is a lot faster and cohesive.
Yeah, I will say, ever since starting taking Pramarisatam, my dreams have been starting to get more real and more structured, which is
why that is?
Probably because better memory recall, or maybe
probably also primarily because of better memory integration and compression, because it's finding when you're asleep, as I'm sure one of your brain's jobs is to integrate the information from the kind of surface level hippocampus areas where it's stored them during the day, and it's designed to integrate them deeper into the network. And so it tries and finds places where it can store that information, and not only just store it, but store it efficiently and find similar data. And so probably why they've gotten so much more real and visceral not just because your brain is doing that more and probably doing that better, as a result of, which we can talk about later, as a result of the enhanced ThetaWave.
Yeah.
Also, the name of our podcast. The enhanced ThetaWave function, but probably it's being more efficient at its integration.
Yeah.
And so it's finding more relevant stuff.
And that's also probably why it's a lot easier to recall those memories, because of how well they've been stored. Stored.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up an interesting. There's Paramerase Tam is one that I have done quite a bit of research on, just because I was so impressed with it when I tried it, that I wanted to know more about the actual mechanics behind why it does what it does. And there was an interesting study that was done that showed that Paramerase Tam increases ThetaWave peaks. And what's interesting about ThetaWave peaks is that ThetaWave in general is a really good way of measuring someone's IQ. And a larger peaks in your ThetaWave frequency generally means a higher IQ. Lower peaks and a higher baseline generally means a lower level IQ.
So this might be a way to potentially enhance someone's logical reasoning skills.
And your logical reasoning skills are only as good as the information that you have to reference. And so it, also enhancing your memory storage capability gives you more relevant information to access.
Yeah, and then it continues to build up even more, making stronger connections with that logic side of your brain. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I will say Paramerase Tam, the only other race tam that I've tried that I've actually been impressed with was the phenylpyrotam, and that one is the one that most people are super impressed with because it has a little bit of a stimulating effect to it and is super focusing. Downside is that you develop a tolerance to it really, really fast, and so you have to cycle it. So it's not a good every day, um, supplement. And I initially tried phenylpyrotam shortly after trying the Prameracetam, and I loved both of them. But in fact, they make a great combination together. They kind of take that tingling, firing on all cylinders effect, and amplify it. But if I had to choose one, I would say the Prameracetam, just simply for the fact that I can always take it. And I've tried the others like Oxyracetam. I've tried Fasoratam, Fasoracetam, I think that's how you say it. I've just recently tried Nephiracetam and Colaracetam, I believe is how you say it. And I've tried all of them, and most of them have very little above, for me, not for, I wouldn't say this for every, I can't obviously say it for everybody. For me, it had very little effect above placebo, or what is possible for placebo, except for Nephiracetam, which I tried and I did not like because it gave me severe brain fog, which I was really sad about because I wanted to like that one because it has a regenerative effect and protection effect on dopamine receptors, specifically D2 receptors. Yeah. And had so much, I was like, that has so much application. And it could just be my brain chemistry right now. Maybe there's some effect with neurogenesis or the regenerative effect that is causing that brain fog. I don't know. Maybe but it was so bad, it was almost debilitating. And so I had to stop taking it. But it's one that has been noted by a lot of different, I mean, again, this is anecdotal because there's limited research on this because it's one of the newer ones. But anecdotally, there's been a lot of reports of people being really impressed with the results over a period of time. They say it doesn't really have a much of a visceral immediate effect, but over time, it has a positive impact on your mood and
so it's one of those things that maybe is like kind of down a little bit, kind of is working it, and then eventually you can kind of see the results of.
And it might have to do with it trying to reset my dopamine.
It might cause a lot of
receptors and it causing brain fog because it's like adjusting way out of whack values. You know.
But it's not very useful for like a daily supplement if you're trying to really. I couldn't go. I couldn't, for me, practical purposes,
I couldn't. If it was going to take several days of that brain fog, I just couldn't be debilitated for several days.
If anyone is meditating for like a couple days straight, then you want to take that.
Well, it might not do that for all people. It might just be me, but that's one of the only ones that I've had a bad experience with, and it wasn't like it was gone within probably 5 hours or so. It wasn't a super long lasting negative experience. It just wasn't something I really was able to experiment around with anymore. I might try it again in the future, but you've tried the Prameracetam and had about the same experience that I have, which was encouraging because I was like, maybe it's just me that's but and this one is one that I feel like even I've done some, anecdotal research on this one, although I've been more interested in like the studies that have been done on it. But and from what I've seen anecdotally, this is one that has gone relatively what's the word I'm looking for?
Unnoticed?
It's not received the attention it deserves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't mention it, which is surprising to me considering
that is surprising.
how viscerally I've felt,
Mm-hmm.
its effect.
I mean, it truly is a very good supplement. I mean, there were times where before I took it where I could not recall a memory. Like I knew I had it, but it was just completely locked away and I had no way of accessing it. After about a week or two of taking Prameristatam, it was like the memory recall was still hard for some of those, but I found them.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew if I wasn't taking the Prameristatam, there was no way I would have ever been able to recollect those memories and like actually then verbalize them at all. It was such a drastic difference that I knew it was not the placebo.
Mm-hmm.
Like because for the first week I was like, okay, I'm just going to have no expectations and just think of it as another supplement that might do something and just see the results. And the results were just like bam, 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 bam. I mean, it was beautiful. I don't know exactly how much it affected my aha moments, but
well, you haven't also been really. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is you haven't been actively engaged every day in the study of something that is challenging your comprehension of it, where it's like kind of like putting you at those blockages moments.
Yeah, definitely not in a way that like a programmer would approach that. When it comes to different frameworks that I'm developing on like different neuroscience stuff, it will kind of be like a how in the world does this work, and I have to figure it out. And I will say like that I do have those kind of like, oh, this is what I need to do. You're right, I don't have as much of those as an everyday basis. So because I've been taking it for so long, maybe it has, I will say it's probably increased the efficiency of like what I'm able to write and how long I'm able to go. Because like you said, it's that constant acetylcholine learning focus. I'm learning as I go and I'm focusing and being able to do that. Now I do wonder, so we talked about acetylcholine with learning, right?
There's something I want to hit on before we move on from Prameristatam if you're planning on moving on. The one of the interesting things, kind of as you were describing how it's helped you, one of the things I'm wondering is maybe if we imagine someone taking a Prameristatam as their brain being a messy room. Now, you might need to search for something that you have no idea where it is. And because it's sped up your overall searching and retrieval process, it's going to help you find those old things that are buried in there faster and more efficiently, making it more likely that you're going to retrieve those. However, I wonder if once you pull that memory out, it doesn't go back in the mess where it was because you're more efficiently storing things now. And so I wonder if it's that new memory, because you retrieved it from its black box down in that mess, you pulled it into your active memory, used it, that memory now is going to be stored way more efficiently than it was.
Yeah, it's like doing my dirty clothes and then cleaning them, getting them out, drying them, folding them, and putting them in its respective drawer.
And if you're learning a lot of new things during the day, those effects of memory, efficient memory retrieval will probably be a whole lot more visceral because of the fact that it's not going to like automatically reorganize inefficient old stuff that was just it's lost.
But it follows kind of the use it or lose it.
When you're piling things on top of it, those new stuff is going to be integrated really efficiently into it.
Yeah, all the stuff that was on the edge of kind of slipping into the unconscious and never come back. Once you recall them and you're getting all those out, boom! Now they can be respectively stored in its correct places. That makes complete sense. Yeah, that's probably exactly what happened because all that I'm learning about, it's all just research. It's very little making up my own stuff.
Right? And is it like staying? Is it really?
I would say for the most part, it's hard because what happens with me is that I'll go through different learning phases, and when I'm in learning phase, I cannot be someone who speaks well or eloquently on what I'm learning during that time at all. Like I might like when I was learning a lot of about thermodynamics, I could not explain to you what even the second law was, but I had a very strong intuitive understanding of how it all worked. I just for some reason could never verbalize it ever. And so but after really about a month of pursuing that and understanding it, boom, I had this point to where all of a sudden, oh, now we can talk about it. And a lot of it is the same for this stuff to where,
well, it's fitting. You probably fit the pieces together.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the aha, so to speak, moment of this is how this whole thing looks and works.
Yeah.
Like I can explain it now in a way that would make sense because it's not just bits and pieces.
Yeah, like there were times to where I would go out, I would talk with people, I would try to talk with people, but I could not because literally 90% of my brain is focused on this problem that I'm not even consciously aware of, and I can't be a functional human being because of it. Like it's so strange. It was such a strange experience because all of my computational power is going somewhere else where I don't even know what's going on. And then all of a sudden it'll be like a big, like, aha moment, and it'll all come rushing down, and it's like a 12-page essay right there. And then all of a sudden and then I'm able to talk about it as much as I can and verbalize it very well, and then it's the next one. And then, kind of how well I was speaking about that kind of goes into kind of a more refined package, and then it's stored, and then on to the next project. And so as I'm in this loading phase, I'm still trying to kind of figure out how that works, but the Pramerisatam has helped a lot when it comes to finding the respective packages and opening it, and then as well as integrating the information and learning and storing the information while I'm able to pull out from other places. And so its efficiency and organization is so much better in my brain than it ever was before taking Pramerisatam.
Yeah.
So
and you combine that. That's why people do. So a lot of times, why people do Racetam stacks, which is because different Racetams have different kind of specialties almost, and there are some, for instance, that have benefits to verbal fluidity and your ability to express things, while others have benefits to your focus, your memory retrieval, your short-term, memory, your spatial awareness and ability to navigate spaces. And one of the things that I noticed about the phenylpiracetam and the Pramerisatam combination was my musical appreciation and detail feature extraction was off the chart. Like it went from kind of being able to work out harmonies for most music to instantly being able to nail a harmony.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And it was another one of those really visceral experiences where it's not like, oh, that could be placebo, you could have just had a good day, yada yada. It was like, no, every time I took it, I went from kind of being able to work out harmonies and be able to pick out bits and pieces of music to understanding the underlying structure of the music.
Yeah. That's
and
cool.
it was absolutely absolutely nutty. And it wasn't even a benefit I was looking for; it just happened.
No, yeah.
But yeah, no, that's kind of why they do those stacks, is because depending on what it is you're looking for, might want a specific kind of stack of features there. And for me, primary stem does the majority of the job. I probably would, if I had more leeway money to throw around, I probably would also generally take fennel parastam when I needed it. But primary stem is just really good because I'm always learning something new. So it's great to like have efficient storage there. Anyway, what were you going to say about the acetylcholine?
Oh yeah, I was going to say about the acetylcholine. So we know that acetylcholine is, learning and focus. And I'm wondering how that correlates to plasticity in the sense that acetylcholine, I'm not quite sure if it's activated during the activity itself. And if it is, because it's like that focus aspect. I'm wondering how that structurally relates to plasticity in the sense that plasticity happens in the resting phase.
Their acetylcholine, I'm going to follow this up, so just be aware, acetylcholine is plasticity. Like I'm following it up by saying it is not the only factor in plasticity.
Yeah.
However, if there was one neurochemical that had to do with plasticity, it's acetylcholine.
Okay.
And plasticity is the equivalent of machine learning rate. That is the ability of a network to adapt and change.
Okay.
And so there is reasons why the adult brain will lower its learning rate, its plasticity over time, biologically speaking, mainly because that biology doesn't take into account drugs, but for the most part, people need to learn young quickly, and once they gathered a ton of information and have more information to go off of, that fast learning could end up having negative consequences if it's done all the time.
Yeah,
and so inefficiently. As biology just like decreases that naturally over time because you have more information to go off of. It needs less. However, selectively, because we're able to kind of hopefully moderate the when, how, being able to turn that back on can be enormously beneficial in a lot of different ways. Not just in learning new concepts as an adult, which is kind of how I use it. But if you think about things like childhood trauma, PTSD, you have these things that are built in negative elements that can be built and integrated into our being that can cause some unwanted behaviors. And with a decreased plasticity, that means your ability to change that is going to be drastically reduced. And so by increasing your brain's plasticity as an adult and putting yourself in the right circumstances to retrain that, you are now setting yourself up for a better life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, because all that storage space is being used for negative memories and negative experiences that were
dictating negative actions.
And were integrated during that time where acetylcholine was really being used and focused because you're trying to learn the world around you as a kid. So what it seems is that acetylcholine is released when you're learning something. And that kind of dispersion allows for that plasticity to take place. And if you were to really focus on something for way too long, and that acetylcholine would be stretched out a little too much where you burn out and kind of don't remember anything past a certain point, which is why they say it's good to, when you're studying or when you're learning something, take a 5 to 10 minute break to where you do nothing after like an hour or so that you can kind of reset everything and kind of get everything organized and then focus again. And I guess that's because of just if there's a continuous acetylcholine disposal, then there won't be any useful plasticity in the sense that it's stretched far too thin to be useful.
Well, if you also think about it in the context of the hippocampus and the fact that when we're learning things during the day, we transfer short-term memory is very, very, very short. It's super short. In fact, much shorter than probably most people think it is. Mm-hmm. But we transfer part of what we're learning, or the relevant information of what we're learning, to our hippocampus. But it gets stored in some, to make it easy, we'll say some superficial layers, like stuff that has easy access to and can change a lot. And so it will store those until it can better integrate them into the hippocampus. Mm-hmm. Now, if we consider the fact that when we're learning something, like say we're in college, and we're learning...
I am in college.
And we're learning English, but then we switch over to math or finance. We'll switch over to finance. And we have to learn both of those in one day, or you can even add more subjects on top of that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of different mostly non-related topics. Now we're studying those things. We have to integrate them into these superficial layers of the hippocampus that we have access to. Mm-hmm. We're not giving our brain a chance to integrate those things deeper before moving on. And so what we're doing is we're actually corrupting every time that we switch, kind of to a non-relevant data. We're corrupting some of the data that we've already learned. Yeah. Because we have a limited ability to store things quickly, so it's going to store it. Take however much time you give it to store things there. Yeah. And so, if it's corrupting the previous subject that you learned and trying to figure out a way to integrate them into this really superficial layer, that means the further integration is going to become corrupted later on. And so our current way of handling things like that at education, might be a breaking topic, but our current way of handling education, and especially in college scenarios like that, where we just dump topics on people and are like, okay, by tomorrow I need you to have 29 pages of this book read, 57 of this one read, and be ready for a test on it, as if you were the only subject that they're learning. Yeah. How can you ever expect somebody to be able to properly integrate or understand that information?
Yeah, that's true, which is really definitely problematic within kind of how we should be learning things. I mean, it seems like we're trying to create memorization machines, practically, where you can memorize specific tasks, hold it on for as long as you need to, and then just completely get rid of it for the next task. Where it's kind of just in, out. And that seems to be what I know what seems to be just normal public school, and then even a little bit into college. I mean, you get a lot more specific in college, obviously, but I would love for there to be a little more specificity in public schools as well, but focus on development of the individual and the person, as opposed to the how much knowledge can you hold as a child. Because there are people, you don't need to be a math genius by 12. Like, you really don't. And there are kids who are being pushed and who are really living their life miserably because they are being forced to become geniuses when that's really not going to help them at all when they're 20, 30, 40, it's going to have very negative effects on them as a person. And if we were to instead focus on them as a individual and life skills, all of a sudden they have a firm foundation on how they should view life, and then are able to develop their own curiosity for things and have mentors and people to then cultivate
Understand the
them.
relevance of the data that they're intaking too.
Mm-hmm. That'd be such a better system, and would prepare them far more for college and higher education than what we have in the public schools. Honestly, if you really want to create very bright individuals who can take information, and since they already have a strong, solid base as an individual to build upon, they can use that as a source of relevance to take in the information far better than what they're teaching in schools right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know that in college, I suffered really hard. Like I sucked. I was probably, I think all through high school and college, I was probably a C student, and I did not care about anything that I was learning. I didn't understand why I needed to know it. Didn't want to know it, and didn't understand any sort of relevance to my life. And as a result, it was really hard for me to sit down and focus on those things. And so I kind of, just went through a lot of that experience with thinking there was something wrong with me, because I couldn't get it together enough to be able to get good grades. But after college, when I had the freedom to be able to pursue things on my own and teach myself, I went wild. Like, I learned more probably in a year outside of college than I would have in the full, the whole 4 years.
Oh, it is insane how much you'll learn just from your own personal curiosity. You'll learn so much more. I mean, listen, I understand teaching kind of the basics of just a foundation, and obviously I think math should be continuous personally. But stuff like English
math just isn't fun, but is helpful sometimes. So
very, very
basic math, probably.
And honestly, I'd rather them just focus on everyone having a very, very solid mathematical understanding up until algebra 1 or 2, and just stay there and focus on really developing that, unless you want to
teach
really focus on that.
After that.
Yeah, I mean, really, up until algebra 2, it stops being practical for the average person. And if we had a very strong majority of individuals who understood math to that level, and then
we'll figure out if this person is going to be using that algebra before you teach it to them.
And then after that, when they know what A plus B equals C means, then just send them on their way. Let them do pottery or crochet, whatever they want to do, and just teach them the basic format: how to write a paper, how to understand things, how to think, and then let them specialize.
Just look at you and me, for example. Like, you and me started in music and very creative, not particularly mathematical focused fields, and eventually circled back around to learning and the need for mathematics and computational mathematics. And at that point, we had a relevance, a reason to want to learn it.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, it just got so much easier because you actually wanted to learn it and you needed it. Once you need something, you're gonna value that thing like nothing else. That information is literally gold in your mind's eye. So of course you're going to put way more mental effort and actually retain the information because it holds fundamental value to you as a being, which forcing subjects on someone will never happen because it's completely just arbitrary in your mind. No matter how much you value that degree, it's from a superficial standpoint that you value it. There's nothing there that gets to the core of your wants or necessities as from stemming from who you are.
Well, I mean, yeah, a lot of that value is like comes from the fact that we value money, and we feel like in order to have money, we need a degree.
Yep.
And as the more that you remove the directness of a value, the less motivational and relevant it's going to be to your brain. Like, for instance, in our current school system, when we're teaching kids math, we teach them, they don't know the value. They are learning it because it is important to their parents that they learn it, and it's important to their parents that they learn it because it's important to society that they learn it, and they're having teachers impart the importance to them. And so there's so much removal of actual understanding and value there. Why would you ever expect them to remember any of that? Yeah. Like, that's, they don't understand the value. They're being told by their teachers that society thinks it's important for them to learn.
Exactly. And they really don't even teach that there is any inherent value in what they're teaching in the first place either. And that's also something that's very fascinating, where even the system itself sets up the learning in a way that sets the standard of arbitrariness. I mean, it's really set up for just the test and absolutely nothing else. It's mind-boggling, and also it's mind-boggling that it's set up in that way, with how quick pace it is in every single subject. I mean, you could be a math genius and be held back because your English sucks, or your history sucks. Who cares? Personally, like, especially if they develop math because they love it. If they don't love math and that's just how they are, then yes, let's try to cultivate them in a way that is good for them. But man, it just seems so bad.
If you need to communicate with people, like, say you're a math genius, you develop this, this new algorithm. You need to communicate that with people.
Yes.
The relevance of the other stuff will come about
Exactly
because of that. But if there's not a need for it, like, why force that?
Yeah, like, if you need to have English for, showing people your framework, you don't need to teach them poetry. Like, have the subject oriented to what they want to do in life. And that can change, and that'll be okay. That's not detrimental to the system at all. It's just kids figuring it out, and adults who we should pay a lot more to help figure out how to draw in that innate curiosity that should be manifested at a young age. Like, there shouldn't be this level of whimsical, free, just, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just go into gender studies. And
there should be I want to do this and this and this.
Yeah, and they'll refine that by themselves through exploration. We should allow for mentors and